would like. Okay, so without further ado, God willing, we're picking up from chapter 23. We did have a short break for Pesach, so we'll do a bit of a recap. Although the chapters seem to mimic each other, more or less, right? In the past several chapters, we've had the pursuit of David. The holy King David is being pursued by the holy King Shaul. It's very tragic that Shaul deemed David his enemy, and whether it was a result of his melancholy, that depressive state that he would fall into, or just regular old human jealousy on his level, he hated David, and he held that David should be killed, executed. And Shaul, as we'll see, and as we've seen throughout, he really thought that God was on his side. And David was sure that God was on his side. And so far, we've seen Hashem save David in several ways. When we last left off, David had narrowly escaped from Nov, the city of Kohanim, where the Mishkan was. And very tragically, Shaul had destroyed the entire city and killed the Kohanim, women, etc. inside. And David fled to another place and yet another. So most recently, this was remarkable. While David was in hiding, he heard that the city of Keilah was being besieged. This was the beginning of chapter 23, which we saw. Keilah was a Jewish city, and David inquired with the Urim V'Tumim. He inquired through the Kohen's breastplate, which he had thanks to Eviatar. He inquired whether he should go defend the city and whether he would be victorious. And Hashem replied, yes. So David goes to defend the city. Sure enough, this makes quite a stir. People hear about it, and Shaul HaMelech finds out where David is. David makes another inquiry, and he asks, will the people of Keilah hand me over to Shaul if I stay here? And the Urim V'Tumim replied, yes, they will hand you over. So David once again must flee. And this was very tragic, to find the flight of the anointed one of God. So let's pick up from here. Let's go from chapter 23, verse 13. So David and his men arose, about 600 men, and they left Keilah. And the verse in Hebrew says, "Vayisalchu b'asher yithalachu." They went to the places they went, which means that they had no fixed spot. They were fugitives, just a band of fugitives, 600 men just floating from place to place. You can't spend too long in one place because the king wants your heads. Anybody who supports David is considered betraying the king, committing treason, and worthy of death. Ula Shaul hugad ki nimlat David mikeilah, and Shaul was informed that David fled from that stronghold of Keilah vayechidar latzet. So he abstained; he did not go to pursue, which is interesting because Shaul initially had told his people, "Hey, let's go fight in Keilah," which might have sounded like, "Let's go fight against the Philistines that are there." But now that he hears that David's gone, he stops the pursuit. So obviously, his real motive was not to fight the enemies of the Jews, the Philistines, but rather to fight against David, which is, again, tragic. Now we have verse number 14. Vayashiv David b'midbar b'mtzadot, vayashiv b'har b'midbar Zif. David comes to an area called Midbar Zif, which is in the territory of Judah, Yehuda, in the south. And you recall, David from Bethlehem is of the descendants of Yehuda. He's from the tribe of Judah, so he's in his home turf. Shaul Shaul was seeking after David all of the days. Although they were searching, there was active search for David. And the pasuk here testifies that it was God that was protecting David. That God did not give David in the hands of Shaul. So you see, although Shaul thought that God was on Shaul's side, God was with David. That's how the prophet is testifying here. Let's move a little forward. We saw last time in verse number 16, Jonathan, the son of Shaul, the beloved friend and supporter of David, he finds out where David is, and he strengthens him. He gives him blessings and encouragement, and he says, "You will reign," which means that the word had gotten out that David was anointed. Atatim loch al Israel, and he says to him, "I will be your second in command." Had Shaul not sinned, it's very possible that David would become the primary king and Shaul would have a secondary role of leadership. But because of Shaul's sin, he ended up losing everything. And here, Jonathan requesting the position of second in command, it might be trying to restore kind of the original plan. I know my father blew it and he missed his opportunity to remain a leader of the Jewish people, but I hope that I, his descendants, can continue that and be your supporter, and I'll be second to you. So here you have the tremendous humility once again of Jonathan, who is referred to, of course, with a hey over here, Yehonatan, because he has surpassed the natural bounds of a human who would normally be jealous of somebody who's threatening his succession. But that is Jonathan. So once again, they both make a covenant, which is probably renewing their old covenant that they had already made, and each one goes his separate ways. And now we have, very tragically, in verse number 19, Vaya'alu Zifim el Shaul. The Ziphites, people who lived in that area of Judah, they went to Saul and they told him that David is hiding amongst them. And they gave him the coordinates. Bamtzadot b'chorsha b'givat Hachila, in the hill of Chachila, asher mimin Yishimon, to the right of Yishimon, to the south of Yishimon, and they gave him in. They gave him up. These were supporters of the king. It was not clear. It was not abundantly clear like it is to us, the innocence of David. And they heard that the king is pursuing David. Of course, we're going to help this righteous king. So they say to Shaul, David is here. Please come down into our territory. And we have trapped David. We'll hand him over to you. And look at the response of Shaul in verse number 21. Bruchim atem lashem. You are blessed to God. He uses the four-letter name of God, which means Shaul really believes that God is on his side and is giving them a blessing for protecting him. Ki chamaltem alai. You had pity on me. Lechuna achinu od duru et makomo. But Shaul said it's not enough just to tell me his general approximate location, because that David, he's a sneaky fox, right? He gets free all the time. I want you to figure out his place, asher tihiyeh. Mi ra'ahu sham. Give me a testimony of who saw him in a particular spot. I want to know a precise location for him. Ki amar elai, because somebody told me arom yarim hu, that David is very cunning and he's gonna try to sneak away. So I want more than just a general location. I want to know specific coordinates. The Radak says something interesting here. The English here says, someone has told me that David acts with great cunning. That's how my English translates it. However, from the context here, that someone is David. It sounds like the verse reads, go figure out David's place, because he told me that he acts with cunning. And in fact, the Radak says that's really what Shaul is referring to, is David's own words. While David was still in the palace of Shaul, you recall he was a great war hero. He had battled against Philistines and had great success. And during that time, Shaul asked David, how do you have such victory? Like, how do you keep beating the Philistines? So David told him some of his tactics. He said, I act with great cunning. I make it seem like I'm in one area where the Philistines will expect me, and I'm actually in another one. And I try to create diversions and trick people. So Shaul says now he's using that information against his enemy as he's pursuing him. And he says, I know that David acts with cunning because he told me. He told me. Which is painful to consider, right? Because he's reflecting on a time where David was his beloved servant in his palace, sharing his secrets to fight against their common enemy. And now those secrets have become Shaul's tools to catch David. So it's, again, it's painful to read. So Shaul says to them, find all of the places he could hide and give me a clear report. And I will search him amongst all the thousands of Yehuda. It's always helpful. I like to connect Psalms here with their permission. there's several Tehillim. The book of Psalms that David composed primarily is not written in chronological order, and we don't necessarily always know when David composed which ones. But there are certain Tehillim, certain Psalms that we know when David wrote them, or we have a tradition when he wrote them. So let me pull up one of them that he wrote at this juncture, when he was in the desert of Ziph, and he was betrayed by his own brethren, that they told Shaul where he was. So I'm going to pull up here on my computer and share it with you. Tehillim number 54, chapter 54. Let me pull that in. This one's explicit. It's not even, you don't need a tradition. David tells us when he composed this. Hold on, I just lost my Zoom screen. I got to find you. Oh, there you are. Can you see the screen? Yeah? Okay.
Yes.
So here it is. This is chapter 54 in the book of Tehillim. And as all Tehillim, and many Tehillim starts for the conductor, a song for David. Bevo hazifim vayimru Shaul. When the Zifim came and said to Shaul, is not David hiding with us? So David is actually telling us the time he composed this Tehillim was right now. In chapter 23 of Shmuel, he wrote chapter 54 of Tehillim. And so here, save me. He's praying to God to be protected because he's in big trouble. He's hiding out in their territory, and they exposed him to Shaul. He is in danger. His life is in danger. So he opens with a prayer for Hashem to save him. Listen to my prayer, hear the words of my mouth. Kizarim kamu alai, because strangers have risen against me. Va'aritzim bikshu nafshi, and violent men have sought my soul. How painful is this? Who are these strangers? These are the Zifim who have made themselves like strangers to David. Although they're his brothers from Yehuda, they made themselves like strangers to him. Erev Tov, good evening to those of you who just logged on. I sent out a memo early. We started a little earlier tonight because of the Marv schedule, but I'm happy to have you. What we are learning right now is Tehillim chapter 54, when David composed it when he was exposed. He was given up by the men of his own tribe. They told Shaul his hiding spot. But nevertheless, David is able to compose Tehillim at that time. Although he's betrayed by his brethren and his life is in danger, he's sitting and writing songs to God, songs of prayer. And look at these expressions of trust. Hashem is my helper. Elokim lazerli Adonai b'sumchei nafshi. The Lord is the one who supports my soul. Yashiv hara leshorerai ba'amitcha atzmitem. You will return evil to those who lie in wait for me. Cut them off with your truth. Yes, so he's praying that Hashem takes care of his enemies, those who betrayed him. And then, this is a common theme in Tehillim, which is instructive for us as well. When a person is in a dire situation, God forbid, life-threatening or the like, what a person ought to do is promise to God, make commitments to serve God. And when you get me out, God, I will serve you even more intensely. So that's the end of this Tehillim. His life is in danger right now. And he says, bin davais bechalach, I will slaughter sacrifices to you. I will volunteer them. I will thank your name because it is good. Yes, so the person is being pursued. He's in danger. And he says, Hashem, please save me. He davens for a specific purpose. And he says, and when you do, I'll be able to thank you publicly, and I'll be able to increase my service to you. This is a Jewish response to suffering.
This is Tehillim 59?
54. Nun Dalet. 54.
Okay.
Yeah. For you save me from every distress, and my eyes lemonades. So this is a beautiful, this is the Jewish playbook. When a person is betrayed by his own family and his life is in danger, a normal human being would become bitter, and they'd go home and start telling their wife about all the people who are mean to him, and they'll start, cursing their own fate. The response of David HaMelech, who is the Mashiach Hashem, he's the one who represents the heart of the Jewish people. The response of David is to turn to God in prayer and to ask to be saved and to double down on his service to Hashem. Okay, so it's a beautiful.
One of the hot peppers over Yom Tov was
from
David and what you call
and Shaul.
Oh, yeah. And
Yes.
I have to, I was in a Chabad minyan, and they have a translation. So we lack, we're behind.
Yeah, yeah. They had a translation of the Haftorah.
Yes.
Nice. Yeah, we could use that. Yeah, that's right. The song that we read on Yom Tov for the Haftorah was the Song of David towards the end. That's in the second book of Shmuel, what we call Shmuel Beis, and he kind of recaps. He recaps the many salvations that Hashem brought, including this one. So this is remarkable. So let's continue. We're in chapter 23. So David has just read it out. He just composed this Tehillim, and Shaul is hot on the chase. Let's go from Pasuk Chaf Hey 25. Vayelech Shaul v'anashav levakesh ve'yagidu LaDavid. Shaul and his people went searching, and it was told to David, Vayered Hasela. This is an interesting expression. It said he went down to the rock. Usually, a rock is like talking about a huge boulder, but usually you go up onto a boulder. What does it mean he went down to a boulder? Either it means he went down into a valley and then up on a rock. He's trying to get a good place to fight, or he went down from the rock. All right, a little technicality here in the text.
In our English version, rock is capitalized.
Yes, it's referred to as the rock. Perhaps it was a known location in that area. I also noticed that I tried to double check if it was maybe referring to God, right? Like he went down to put his trust in God, who we sometimes refer to as our tzur, our rock. But I think it's a proper noun because maybe it was just a particular rock that was so prominent that it gets its own name. Yeah. And he sat in that desert, and Shaul heard about his whereabouts, and he chased him there. And he's out on the pursuit. In verse number 26, Shaul is coming from this side, and David's on the other side. He's about to be caught. Vayhi David nechpaz lalechet mipnei Shaul. And David hurried to go away from Shaul. At this point, I must point out another Tehillim. Another Tehillim. This is one that we say in Hallel, which we were just saying throughout on the Yom Tov of Pesach. Let me pull it up. This is a remarkable midrash. It says that Shaul had nearly caught David, and David was nechbaz lalechet. He hurried, he hastened away from Shaul. In Tehillim 1, is it 116? Yeah. In Tehillim 116, we say this in the Hallel. It's right before Ma'ashiv Lashem. We say this line in the verse number 11. Ani amarti bechavzi kol adam kozev. I said in my haste, all men are liars. A very cynical, kind of bitter line in the middle of this psalm, in the middle of this Tehillim, which is followed by praise to Hashem for thanking Hashem for saving him. The line right before is, I said in my haste, all men are liars. Ani amarti, the word here is bechofzi, in my haste. That's referring specifically, the Radak brings down over here, that's referring to this episode, when David was nearly caught by Shaul and he had to hastily flee. At that moment, that near miss, David said, all men are liars. Which man is he referring to? Shmuel Hanavi, the prophet, Shmuel. He anointed me and he told me that I'm going to be the king. Look at me. I'm running around a desert. The king of Israel is chasing me to kill me and my men. I'm nearly dead. I'm a dead man. All men are liars. He felt a pang of hopelessness and despair. And in this haste, when he was running away from Shaul, he said, all men are liars. And at that point of hopelessness, Hashem actually makes a tremendous miracle occur, as we'll see in a moment. Hashem says, I told you you'll be okay. You could have trusted me. Look what happens next. Back in our text, in verse number 27, Umalach ba el Shaul lemor. A messenger came to Shaul saying, the word for messenger here is angel, malach. Rashi says it was a literal angel. Hashem made a miracle occur because this was an absolutely hopeless situation for David. He was about to be caught. And suddenly an angel appears before Shaul and he says to him, Maharav Alecha, quickly go. Kifashtu plishtim ala haaretz. The Plishtim are spreading across the land. You have to go back and protect your people. Yes, so he's about to, you can just imagine. It's like the cartoons, right? He's about to take hold of David. As he's about to catch him, they've got him cornered. Suddenly, an emergency message comes to the king Shaul, and he's told, you have to go back, you have to go defend your people. By Ashov Shaul mirdof achrei David. And there it was, at the nick of time, David is saved, and Shaul retreats from chasing David, and he goes towards the Philistines to go fight against the Philistines to protect the Jews. Al kain karu lamakom sela hamachlekot. Therefore, that place was called the Rock of Division. The Rock of Divisions. What is that referring to? It was referring to the parting of David and Shaul, that near miss, and they were just divided from each other miraculously. Alternatively, it's referring to arguments that Shaul was having internally and with his men. Some were saying, we have to go back and defend the Jews. The Plishtim are here. Others were saying, yes, but killing David is also essential because he threatens the kingdom. So we should stay. No, we should go. We should stay. We should go. It was the Rock of Divisions. On this place, there's a great debate whether they should give up the pursuit of David or not. The Radak writes that this is the rock of separation, division, separation, because from here and forward, whenever David and his men, whenever they would come to this spot, they would separate from their horse or the animal they were riding on. They would bow down to Hashem, and they would make the blessing, Baruch Ata Hashem she'asali nes b'makom hazeh. Blessed are you, Hashem, who have made a miracle for me in this place. There's a special mitzvah to make a blessing on the place where a miracle occurred for you. And this was nothing other than a miracle. That David was about to be caught, and he was saved miraculously by a last-minute messenger that pulled Shaul away. And the opening line of the next verse, but really it's the end of this actual section in the Hebrew text. Vayal David misham, and David went away from there. Vayeshev im sadot ein gedi. And he now went to Ein Gedi, another location in the south, a place called Ein Gedi, a popular tourist spot in Israel nowadays, which brings us to the end of chapter 23. Oh, I really wanted to do this tonight.
Janice and I were at En Gedi.
Oh, you went?
We went there.
Beautiful. Okay, we'll have to hold here. Again, as I was saying in the beginning, the time of the shir is shifting now. Maybe we can make a decision now. Next week, we could either start at 7:10 p.m. as we did this evening, or we can do it after Mariv, which would be at 8:45 p.m. Do you have a preference? Whether we should do it at 7:10 earlier or later? Does anybody have a preference? 7:10. 7:10. Okay, great. So we'll continue, God willing, next week, 7:10. And as it shifts a little bit, we'll try to get it back to that 7:30 time. But for now, let's continue at 7:10 next week. God willing, we'll pick up from 24. Yes, Koach. It's nice seeing you all again. Back on our learning. All right, we're back. See ya. Have a good night.